So when you hear the word invasion, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably tanks, right? Tanks rolling across a border, soldiers storming a beach. But you know what? That's really only a tiny piece of the puzzle. Today, we're going to deconstruct the modern blueprint for an invasion, and you're about to see how it's less about pure brute force and more about a cold, calculated, psychological performance.
This quote right here, it really gets to the very heart of it. An invasion isn't just about conquering land. It's a process. It's about taking a society's reality, their whole world, and completely dismantling it, so you can build your own reality right on top. It's, in a way, violent persuasion, engineered to make an entire population believe that fighting back is completely and utterly useless.
Okay, so how does that actually work? What does this blueprint for a modern invasion really look like, step by step? Well, let's break it down. The first thing you have to understand is that the main goal isn't just blowing up the enemy's army. It's about inducing a state of, well, societal paralysis. It's a psychological checkmate. The idea is to make the will to fight back just evaporate before the real fighting even gets going.
And this is where the cold, hard strategic calculation comes in. See, an invading empire knows that a country that's been burned to the ground is, well, it's worthless. You can't get resources from a smoking crater, and you can't tax a population that's been decimated. The real art is to break their spirit, but keep the machinery of the country and its people intact enough to still be useful to you.
And here's the kicker. This process of violent persuasion doesn't begin with the first shot, not even close. The invasion actually starts long before any troops ever cross a border, sometimes years or even decades ahead of time. This first quiet phase is all about strategic dislocation.
To break a society, you first have to understand what makes it tick. Intelligence agencies will literally create what's called a social architecture map. Just think of it like a sociological X-ray of the target nation. It's not looking for army bases, it's searching for the hidden cracks in the country's social fabric. And look, every single society has these fractures. It's just part of human nature. An invading power doesn't need to create them. It just has to find them and then apply very careful surgical pressure. They might secretly fund certain groups or spread disinformation to fan the flames of resentment, anything to turn these small cracks into massive, society-shattering fault lines.
So what's the end goal of all this pre-war meddling? It's simple, really. When people are constantly stressed out, worried about political chaos, social unrest, or just putting food on the table, their ability to come together for a national resistance just plummets. They get worn down, they get exhausted, and a tired population is always easier to conquer.
Okay, so the target society is now internally weakened, it's tired. The next step for the invading power is to create a justification. Because let's be real, empires almost never admit they're invading for oil or for a strategic port. They need a public story, a narrative.
And there's a classic term for this official justification, the casus belli. It's the reason they give to the rest of the world, and just as importantly to their own citizens, for why this war is absolutely necessary. It's a critical piece of the psychological operation.
And this chart just lays out the game perfectly. On one side, you have the stated reason, the casus belli, which almost always sounds noble, right? Liberation, security. But on the other side, you have the actual goal, which is almost always about cold, hard imperial interest. The trick is to find a grain of truth in the casus belli and then blow it up until an invasion seems like the only sane option. All right, the pre-war phase is over. The story is sold. Now the war goes hot, and when the physical invasion finally begins, the strategy is usually something called hyper-warfare. The goal isn't just to win. The goal is to win so fast and so overwhelmingly that the enemy society literally collapses before it even has a chance to figure out what's going on.
The whole thing is built around shattering something called the OODA loop. So every soldier, every general, has to observe a situation, orient themselves to what's happening, decide what to do, and then act. Hyperwarfare is all about moving so blindingly fast that the enemy can't even complete that cycle. You're hitting them with the next crisis before they've even begun to process the last one. It induces total mental paralysis.
So how do you create that kind of paralysis? Well, the invasion never starts with a big tank battle. It starts with what's called a decapitation strike. The goal is to systematically blind the enemy state, to sever its head from its body.
So within the first couple of hours, precision missiles and bombs are taking out the entire central nervous system of the country. We're talking radar stations, internet cables, satellite dishes, TV towers, cell networks, anything and everything that lets the government see what's happening and talk to its own people.
And the effect of this is threefold and absolutely devastating. First, you get military paralysis. Generals can't give orders to an army they can't speak to, so the military just shatters into a bunch of confused, isolated units. Second, civilian isolation. The population is plunged into darkness, cut off from any real information, left with only rumor and fear. And third, the invader achieves a total information monopoly. They are now the only ones telling the story of the war.
Now that the enemy is essentially blind and deaf, the invading force can zero in on the Schwerpunkt, or the center of gravity. This is a classic military concept. It's the one thing that's the source of the enemy's power and their will to fight, and 9 times out of 10, that's the capital city.
And the way they go for it is often this incredibly risky all-or-nothing maneuver called the Thunder Run. Basically, armored columns just ignore the main enemy armies on the borders and make a mad dash, a sprint, straight for the capital. The goal isn't just to capture a city, it's to deliver a symbolic death blow. Seeing enemy tanks parked in front of the presidential palace, that image is designed to scream to the rest of the country, it's over. You've already lost.
So you can see how all of these pieces, the incredible speed, the decapitation strike, that lightning-fast thunder run, it's all building towards one single objective, to achieve a complete psychological checkmate within the first 48 hours.
I mean, this quote really says everything, doesn't it? This whole doctrine is famously known as shock and awe, and it's designed specifically to overwhelm the human brain. The explosions and the physical destruction, they're just tools. The real goal is the psychological destruction of the enemy's will to even try to fight back.
Just try to put yourself in the shoes of a civilian on the ground. Your TV is static, your phone is dead, your leaders are silent. Your military seems to have just vanished, and now there are enemy tanks in your capital city. And it all happened in less than 2 days. It's not just a military defeat, it's the complete shattering of your entire reality. That speed, that shock, is designed to create a collective trauma, a feeling of learned helplessness that makes any further resistance feel completely and utterly pointless.
Which, of course, leads us to a final, really crucial question. This whole opening act of a modern invasion is built to create psychological paralysis. But here's the thing about paralysis. It doesn't last forever. So what happens when a conquered society starts to wake up from that initial shock? Well, that's where the art of invasion ends, and the brutal, grinding, long-term reality of occupation begins.